Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Hi.
Welcome in. Welcome to Beyond TERRA, which is a Warhammer 40K, and I guess maybe, 30K if we're talking.
Primarchs, yeah.
If we're talking the Primarchs. A Warhammer lorecast, we'd like to call it, podcast, talking head style content where myself and Chris, aka Stormbeard, we are going to be talking about all things Warhammer 40K. Why? Because we talk about Warhammer 40K like all of the time, quite literally. There's a fond memory I have. Well, I have a few fond memories. Our Adepticon trip, where we went with a bunch of the Magic crew last year. Thanks, John. Thank you. And Chris and I were up late talking Warhammer lore with the rest of the crew, just trying to sleep. And we've now made that a trend. Like every convention we go to, Chris and I will just stay up late and just talk about 40K stuff. And we did that also at Gen Con this last year too. It was just we'd just stay up late and talk about 40K stuff. And we're always like, we should just talk about this to the world. And so we did that once. We did this Magi Lorecast a couple of months ago, or maybe it was even last year now. And I wanted to make something a bit more formalized and make it more of a ongoing series. Not saying this is something we're going to do every Wednesday, but I think it's something we'll try to put on the calendar more and do more regularly, and also have planned content that we're going to talk about each week or each episode. So we're starting with the Primarchs and their legions, and we're just going to go from 1 to 20. We're going all the way down the line, talking about each Primarch. I was like, Chris, do you feel confident that you could talk about every Primarch? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay.
Some more than others, but
yeah,
there are some that are cool but have a little less lore than others.
Yeah.
But overall, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah. So that maybe there might be somewhere it's like, okay, are we really going to talk about this person for an entire episode?
We're really gonna talk about Ferris Management.
So maybe we do a twofer on those episodes, so we could see who our favorites and not favorites are. But yes, so we're starting from 1. And we're going to go down the line. So if you're looking to learn about 40K stuff, hang out with us. This will be live streamed on twitch.tv/MagiRPG. And also the VODs will be uploaded. I'm going to actually, I'm being selfish. Sorry, MagiRPG. And I'm going to upload them to my YouTube channel because I want to do more. I've talked about this a bajillion times already, but I used to do Witcher lore videos on my channel, and even me and Chris and Bijan Usubard and Miri Frank, we've done cyberpunk talks. We did an Edge Runners talk. We did. There was another one that we did. I can't remember what it was, but I put them all on my YouTube channel because to me, those types of talking about our favorite lore and stuff, it could fit on MagiRPG, but to me, MagiRPG is actual plays and things like that, and this type of content I really like on my own channel. So anyway, that's where it'll be. But join our Discord, discord.gg/MagiRPG, where we talk about all things, everything, but we talk a lot about Warhammer in our Discord. So also I hear myself echoing a bit. I didn't originally, but now I do.
Give me 1 second.
Yep, you're good. So and that's where we talk about all things Warhammer, and so you can join us there to talk about things more in depth outside of this short segment. So I want to dive into it and get chatting and yapping. The first thing I want to do for this podcast is for first 5-10 minutes, Chris and I are going to talk about Black Library stuff and what we've been reading lately, if anything. There may be some times where we're not reading anything related to Warhammer, but I want to talk about what we've been reading, because I know I have been reading some stuff, and then I want to do a vote on what my next book is going to be, because I have a couple in theme to tonight's discussion. So let's talk Black Library things, what we've been reading, and then we can dive into our first episode talking about the Lion, Lionel Johnson. Recently, just finished two things. One, a audio drama, 40K audio drama called Our Martyred Lady, which I loved so much that I made almost all of the Wrath and Glory crew also listen to this audio drama, because
She did, yes.
and you did, right, Chris? You listened to it?
I haven't finished it yet. I'm on chapter whatever. I'm on the last part. So they're like, hour long, chapters or sections or whatever. I'm on the last part.
Okay, that's fair. It's a very short read or short listen. It's a short listen, and basically what it is, for context for everybody, is it is not an audiobook, but it's more so like a narrated audio drama that follows Saint Celestine, Inquisitor Greyfax, and some Custodes guy.
Longinus.
Longinus.
You don't even remember his name.
So he's clearly not the important character to me in the story. some custodian. I don't know. Longinus. But it's really all about Inquisitor Greyfax and Saint Celestine. So it is so fucking good. I cannot, the first 10 minutes of the audio drama is Saint Celestine going off, and it makes you want to get up from your chair and go praise the Emperor. It is amazing.
When they enter, tiny bit spoiler. I just want to talk about one thing. When they go into the warp and their navigator is like, something is hunting us, and she goes out the airlock, I was like, all right. Let's calm down here. Let's call it.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit.
She's still a human. She's still a living saint.
She's a living saint. Yes. She has died many a time before.
Some respect on her name.
Truly. You best put some respect on Saint Celestine's name, because she's like one of my favorite named characters. And Inquisitor Greyfax, honestly, also is up there for me now. She is so cool. I love her. And she's narrated, but by the way, also there's very prominent voice actors and actresses who narrate these characters. Catherine Tate, who is one of the companions in Doctor Who, she narrates Inquisitor Greyfax. The voice actress for Minthara from Baldur's Gate 3 is the voice of Saint Celestine, and she's so good. So yes. Okay, so Chris, what are your thoughts thus far on Our Martyred Lady, on the audio drama?
I dig it. It's very, it part of me wants, because it's an audio drama, and I think we talked about this a little bit. I don't think there's a written book to go with it. And they do this thing where there's specifically one scene where a character is at a pulpit, preaching to the followers of the ecclesiarchy of the imperial truth, and their speech, their sermon is it's what you're listening to, and then it gets quiet, and then Inquisitor Greyfax and Longinus are talking to one another, but his speech is still going on, just at a lower volume. And your ears, I'm kind of I kind of want to listen to a speech, but also Inquisitor Greyfax and Longinus are talking, and also at some points I want subtitles for an audio drama. It's weird, but I am digging it. They put sound effects and music behind it. You hear bolter rounds and hymnal choirs singing during battles and explosions. So that's really cool. I'm a fan.
Yeah. Inquisitor Greyfax and Saint Celestine have great chemistry.
Yeah, that's what you can call it. Definitely.
Yeah, some chemistry there, gang. They have history. Inquisitor Greyfax kind of is sus of Saint Celestine, and doesn't admit to like her or find her useful and things like that. And so there's that bit of that tension there. Yeah, it's really, really great overall. Like some of the stuff when they're fighting, like chaos, it's like so good. Oh my God. It just like immerses you. I do really like the audio drama style. Like Chris said, there's some setbacks to it. But overall was a big fan, made the whole gang listen to it. They also loved it. So if you want a quick read, only like 3 hours, you should totally check out Our Martyred Lady. I then, following that, read the Saint Celestine book, which is an actual audiobook. Celestine the Living Saint is what it's called. It's a bit of a story. It's like a parallel. It draws between Celestine. Basically, my interpretation is she dies at some point, and you're in like this like weird afterlife state of her kind of facing some parts of her, like her faith, her there's like 3 aspects of herself that she faces. So parallels between that and then like the real world where she's on some planet fighting, and there's of course some people are always sus of her. They all think she's like a false like witch or something, and they always want to kill her. Poor Saint Celestine. She's just here.
Maybe it's because she's an ecclesiarchy demon prince.
That
I just think that's what she is.
That's what people seem to think that she is. And like everything I've read, I'm like, can we just accept her and love her? But anyway, also really great audiobook, also voiced and narrated by Minthara from Baldur's Gate 3. So
such an amazing, powerful voice actress for an amazing, powerful character.
So yeah, that's what I've been reading, and it's been great. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. I'll definitely be reading more of the Sororitas related books. Anything before I get into my voting on my next book, Chris? Any other thoughts or comments?
Recently, I finished Lords of Silence, which is a Death Guard book.
Oh.
A current Death Guard book. So there's a lot of squelching. There's a lot of descriptions of organs hanging out and flies and pus and pustules and names that sound like you have mashed potatoes in your mouth. It was awesome.
And that's
so gross.
And that's your like choice for a chapter.
Yes, absolutely.
That
yeah.
That
if
is.
You want to know more about some Death Guard stuff? Read Lords of Silence.
Okay, that's definitely an acquired taste, for sure. But I will say, from The End and the Death, when I read that, there was like one chapter that had some Death Guard stuff, and I was like, actually, this is pretty cool. But it's not too high on my list personally. But yes, so there's a lot of Warhammer books, everybody. There are just
so many,
so freaking many. Too many. And so I would like to get some votes on which one I should read next when my Audible credit shows up in the next couple of days. So because we're talking about Lion L. Johnson this evening, I have 2 books that have been on my mind for the Lion. One is, so this is choice 1. The Unremembered Empire, which is 30K, and it follows, it has some interactions between Gilliman, Sanguinius, and the Lion. So I'm very interested, obviously, because I do like Sanguinius, obviously. So so I'm like, okay, this could be a cool one. And apparently the Lion like is kind of an asshole to the other Primarchs. And so I really,
as we'll get into.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I love the interactions from the books that I've read so far. I love interactions between the different Primarchs. So that one definitely interests me. So that's choice 1, the Unremembered Empire. And the other choice I have is Angels of Caliban, which is Lionel Johnson versus Conrad Kurz. And also super interested in this one. I read the Conrad Kurz book. I think he's really cool. I want to see the Lion and Conrad like get at it. I don't know. We'll see. So that is my other choice. So the Unremembered Empire versus the Angels of Caliban. I'll put a poll in Twitch chat.
I don't. I think if we could put a third in there.
All right. Here's a
I
third.
think you should. I think you should check out the. So these are newer books, but they do. They're doing books on, like, Constantine Valdor, how you're gonna say his name, has a book. Sigismund has a book. Eidolon has a book, and Luther has a book now. They were released all four released in the past 5 years or so. And the Valdor book, because he was the first custodian, he was there for everything the Emperor did, and he talks about it all. Like the Unification Wars, the Thunder Warriors, which we'll touch on today. You know, back to the year like 29,500, like before the Space Marines existed, before the Primarchs existed, what the Emperor was like, because you have the Emperor's personal bodyguard narrating a book. So I think that might be a little cool. Might want to throw that into the ring.
Okay, the Constantine Voldar book. Does it have a name?
Valdor, Birth of the Imperium.
Voldor, Birth of the Imperium. Okay.
I think it's only like maybe 300 pages, so it might be a quick read.
Yeah. Honestly, all of the 40K books are pretty short reads to me. Like I can finish them because I've been reading the Stormlight Archive. Like even if it's like a 10-hour book, I'm like, that's fucking nothing. And I can read that in like a week. So yeah.
People are saying I'm quiet. Am I quiet for you, or is that an OBS thing?
You're normal for me. It might be an OBS thing. Let me turn you up a little bit.
Yeah, I sound loud in my ears.
Okay, because according to OBS, we're both in the yellow.
Okay.
You're a little bit lower in the yellows. Can you turn yourself up just a tad? Or maybe I'm yapping too loudly, everybody. That's probably what it is. I'll turn myself down a little bit.
Are you attenuating, so when I talk over you, is it turning me down?
Maybe. Okay.
Test 1 2 1 2.
And then here's me. We should be at similar levels now. We're both in the yellow. Okay, this is better.
This is better, Cole. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Shame. Hi, Matt.
Okay, great. So, okay, great. So, I'll put a poll up, but I'll also put it in the Discord and then also on YouTube. Gang, if you have a choice in the matter on which one I should read next, please let me know. So, yeah. All right. Now, without further ado, let's dive into. This is the part where I get to sit back and listen to Chris talk about the first Primarch, Lion L. Johnson.
Yes. So the Lion. Before we talk about the Lion, I do want to talk about like what is a Primarch? What makes them so special? You know, touch on what how they came to be. And so we have to go back about 12,000 years back, to what was known as the Unification Wars. And this was a time on Earth, Terra, where techno barbarians, as they are called in the lore, had control of the Earth. You know, they had their tribes and they had like technology, but they were like barbarians, I guess, with the name. And the Emperor revealed himself and was like, "I'm taking charge." And yeah, he just had wars all over Earth, from his stronghold, Mount Everest. That's where the Imperial Palace is. It's in the Himalayas on top of Mount Everest, if you didn't know that.
I did not.
Yeah, and so the Unification Wars happened, but to do that, he needed soldiers. So he made the custodians, and the custodians are made one at a time by the emperor. So they are perfection incarnate when it comes to a soldier. But he didn't want to throw custodians at these techno barbarians. No, he needed more. So he created what were known as the Thunder Warriors, and this was kind of the first iteration of what we know as Space Marines. They weren't as sound in body and mind as Space Marines are. The Emperor kind of, with Space Marines in the 40th, the 41st millennium, they are taken in as children. They are 10, 11. They are molded in the image of the Codex Astartes, depending on what chapter you're in. But Thunder Warriors were just like grown men, and the Emperor and his lab with all of his people. Um, that's a whole another thing. We're just pumping out these warriors, and they were brutal, and they were aggressive, and their minds were broken, and enough time and enough bodies throwing at it, he won the unification wars and became the emperor of Terra. But he realized that, yeah, to take over the galaxy, I can't use Thunder Warriors. So he pretty much murdered all of his Thunder Warriors with the first batch of Astartes. He sent them on a mission uh, to like the last techno barbarian chieftain. But what was waiting up there was like the first legion of Space Marines and slaughtered them all. He slaughtered his first,
Damn.
experiment.
That's
And yeah, and
rebrand.
that's what's up?
He needed a rebrand because
He
Thunder
needed a
Warriors
rebrand,
isn't
yeah.
is not a cool name. Also,
Ye and y Yes, they were a troublesome pact, if you will. But for the Space Marines, there is a lot of lore, a lot of stuff has been retconned when it comes to what happened, how they came to be, um, you know, there is a story on, when the Emperor first made the Primarchs and the Space Marines, for example. And this is now canonized lore, I believe. The Emperor went to a planet called Molech, Molech, and on Molech was a portal to the warp, and he went there with his retinue, with Constantine Veldor, and he went with someone named, I believe her name was Erda, which you could say was the Emperor's partner in crime. And he went through this warp portal, and he came out a changed man. But from the warp portal, he was given the power to make the Primarchs. So a lot of theories out there is he sold his soul to the Chaos Gods for the knowledge to create the Primarchs, and he was playing the long game. We can talk about what his grand plan was with the Webway project that Magnus eventually destroyed and all that stuff. But we can talk about that when we talk about Magnus. But with all of this, he started the Primarch project along with the Astartes project. And with the Primarchs, there's also lore of like, oh, did the Astartes come first or the Primarchs come first? Why are the Astartes chapters kind of why do they resemble their Primarch? Current lore kind of establishes that they were started in parallel. So the Emperor and his partner, Erda, were the father and mother of the Primarch. She was a geneticist. She was really, really skilled, and she was also a perpetual, which is someone that will just keep reviving time and time again if they die. Just like the Emperor, just like Vulcan, the Salamander's Primarch. And the Emperor took little pieces of himself and put them into 20 gestation pods to grow his quote unquote sons. These 20 pieces of the Emperor are the Primarchs. And with that, we start with the Primarch of the First Legion and whether the lion was the first to be created He wasn't the first discovered after what happened to them, but he is the Primarch of the First Legion, the Dark Angels. With that, the Emperor, created all 20 Primarchs, and at some point in time, um, the Chaos Gods, realizing maybe that the Emperor reneged on his deal he made with them or something, the Chaos Gods went into the Himalayan mountains to the Primarch gestation pod, captured all 20, and scattered them into the warp. And this was very troublesome because you have your 20 sons and now they're gone and they're all scattered across the galaxy.
So does this happen like early on when he first makes them? Is that, or does this happen like
Yeah,
okay.
this happens in like the year like 30,000 exactly.
Okay. So like all the
So
stuff that happens later, the Horus Heresy, all that shit, that all is later on.
yes, so the Unification Wars ended in I believe 29,500. 500 years ish so pass. He gets he unifies Terra. He gets the power to create the Primarchs. And then probably around the year 30,000, give or take, 50 years or so. I'm not sure if it happened before 30,000 or right after, but as pretty much as soon as the Primarchs are, I don't want to use this word, but it's the word they use, gestating in their pods. Um, the Chaos Gods kidnap them and scatter them across the universe. And that leads us to Lionel Johnson, the Primarch of the First. Lionel, we can call him the Lion, Lionel, whatever. Lion L is his name. His last name is L. Johnson. Um, First name Lion. The lion ended up on a planet called Caliban, and Caliban was known as a death world. This was a world where humans constantly lived in strife. They constantly live in fear because Caliban was situated very close to the Eye of Terra, or not Eye of Terra, Eye of Terror, where Slanesh was born. So Caliban, was plagued by what were known as great beasts. Um, Mechanicus, biologists on that went to Caliban just classified them as, can you hear my cat, by the way?
No.
Oh, he's yowling for some reason. Um, so Caliban being so close to the Eye of Terror, their natural fauna were essentially they became like play possessed animals. They grew limbs, tentacles, eyes. They grew huge. So think of Caliban as kind of like medieval Europe with eldritch horrors in it. Instead of Arkham horror, think of like, Germany horror, essentially. So the humans on Caliban, lived in these giant castles and, bulwarks where they had to survive thanks to monster hunters, what was known as the Order. And the Order were a group of knights, and think of them as like your European knight. They had very rudimentary power armor you know, from what they've discovered. They had rudimentary, like futuristic weapons, but they were well trained, well organized. And the leader at the time of the Order, and also think more like Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur mythos type stuff. Swords in a center, all sitting around, scheming. Um, at the time that the lion was found on Caliban, the leader of the Order was named Luther. And Luther and the Order were out hunting these great beasts, and they encountered a large grizzly man in the forests of Caliban, and they thought it was a great beast. And as they started charging, Luther actually stopped them because he saw it was a human. And this bearded, long-haired kind of mountain man ended up being Lionel Johnson. The Luther, sorry, it's gonna probably happen a lot. Luther in his very knowledgeable ways, took in the lion, even though, people were afraid of him. You have this 8-foot tall mountain of a man, who's been living in your forest, but he doesn't seem to be corrupted at all. He doesn't seem to have any of the quote unquote great beast effects from the Eye of Terror. So Luther takes in the lion and teaches him the way of Caliban, teaches him the way of the order. And just like any Primarch that we'll talk about over the next, 18 episodes, he takes to it with great speed, great finesse, great accuracy. He learns Caliban history. Luther hands him a sword and he's the greatest sword fighter in the order in days. Um, and with that, the years pass, and Luther and the lion become best friends. Maybe even like Luther almost becomes like a surrogate father to the lion in a way. And things are going as well as they can on Caliban. And with the lions, he's so good at what he does. He can single handedly take down a great beast. He can, he's not charismatic, he's stern, he's taciturn, he sits in the corner and kinda scowls all the time, but when he gets out there, he does what he does. Luther's the opposite. Luther is the man of the people. People from Caliban look to oh, 1 second, please.
I
He
I,
Yes,
a quick side comment.
yes.
What was my? Oh my god! I just was thinking about something with the lion. Um, I can't remember now. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Yes, yep.
It'll come to me.
And so, Luther is the man of the people. He's charismatic. People on Caliban look to him for order, for guidance. Yes,
I
you remember.
I remember. So like, okay, this is something, and maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself, but like I noticed this with what's his name that I was learning about. A lot of the Primarchs, they seem to have like their guy. So that seems to be Luther here. It's like
Yeah,
they're like their right hand man kind of thing.
cor correct. Yeah, a
Okay.
lot of the Primarchs, um, you know, save a handful of them, Conrad Kurz, for example, had no one on Nostromo. Um, and, but yes, a lot of the Primarchs, when they landed on worlds that had human populations, um, whether it was a group of warriors or some family or a father figure, they realize they see this, whether they were found as a child or as a grown man, they immediately see the gravitas of this person. And yeah, they more likely than not they are taken in some way or fashion. And the Primarchs get friends, they get groups. You know, Lion was the lion, and like I said, he was always very gruff and quiet, and he always had a scowl on his face. He just wasn't a people person. He never there's lore that says that, the lion, was found as a grown man, but Primarchs outside their gestation pod matured and grew very quickly. And the lion wasn't found by the emperor all that fast. I think, he was probably like in the middle of being found by the emperor. So there's no real telling how long the lion lived in squalor by himself on Caliban. It could have been 15 years, it could have been 500 years. In terms of a Primarch, time doesn't matter in that sense. So, he could have been, I always kind of think of him as like Robin Williams in Jumanji when he comes out of the game board for the first time and he's like not trustworthy. He's got long hair and a beard. He's wearing rags, he doesn't trust anything. He doesn't know what a car is. Um, and yeah, and so that's kind of, how the lion is and would remain to this day. But yeah, going back to Luther, Luther is the man of the people. And eventually, over the years, when it's time for someone to kind of step up and become kind of like the overall ruler of the order. Because Luther was in charge of this kind of sect of the order. I think I said he was in charge, but he was in charge of this little kind of portion of it. But eventually, the lion is given more power and more rank than Luther. And this was kind of the first nail in the coffin for Luther. And we'll talk about, I know we're talking a lot about Luther, but Luther is, um, I would say he's just as big as a character as as the lion is. And this was kind of the first kind of backstab that Luther has from the lion. He accepted it instantly. He had no qualm about kind of stepping over Luther after everything Luther did for him. But Luther accepts it, and they continue on protecting Caliban. The Emperor finds the lion eventually, and the lion immediately kneels. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Just says like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm with you now." And the lion goes with the emperor, and the lion does do something, rather, I guess you could say, nice. But he asked the emperor if he could make um, Luther a space marine. Said this man has, he's been a father to me. Can you make him a space marine? And the emperor kind of says, yeah, we'll see what we can do. And he is given kind of like transhuman surgery, and he is given a couple of special enhanced organs, but at no point, shape, or time is he a space marine. And he, the line is given control of, you know, the first, you know, um, chapter, the Dark Angels, and he instills something of the Dark Angels called the Hexagrammaton, I believe it's called correctly. Hexa 6 grammaton. Um, I don't know what grammaton means, but essentially he turns the Dark Angels. This is something, very similar, again, going back to medieval Europe when you had your armies in a line. You had your footmen, you had your knights in armor, you had your cavalry, you had your ranged units, you had your artillery, whether it was catapults or trebuchets or whatever. And he recreates that within his chapter. And that's where you get things like the Deathwing, which are the Deathwing are all Terminators. That's where you get the Raven Wing, which are all bikes, like they're all motorcycles. And there's other parts of it. I forget their name. Ravenwing and Deathwing are the two big ones, but you can see them as like the Ravenwing are the mounted cavalry in medieval Europe. The Deathwing are the knights in shining armor who are in the thick of it, similar to obviously your Terminator. And he breaks up the Dark Angels into these six groups. You have your heavy weapons, you have your your long range stuff like that. And so he instills this into the Dark Angels themselves. The Great Crusade happens, and we get into the lion being given control, and the emperor says, "Cool, here's your chapter. You're in control now. I got stuff to do." And after all the Primarchs are found, and the Great Crusade happens, the Emperor kind of goes back to TERRA, and he makes Horus the War Master. Horus, you're in charge, and they do their thing. They're doing the Great Crusade. They're scouring planets of Xenos and heretics and all this stuff. But Luther still is every day. He's standing next to the lion, and the Dark Angels are looking down on him. Remember, he's not a space marine. He's a human with a couple extra organs. And the lion also gets more and more stern and short and just overall kind of just a shitty person. He's never was one for politics or conversation. And, the Great Crusade happens, and the lion kind of tells Luther, hey, why don't you just stay at home? Go back to Caliban, recruit space marines for me. You have this power. I'll give you Caliban until I get back. And so Luther goes back to Caliban and does his thing for quite a while. Then the Horus Heresy happens, the fateful Horus Heresy. And the Lion is one of the only few living loyalist Primarchs who never made it to TERRA. He never fought on TERRA. He never saw what happened. He didn't see what happened in the Sol system. He was out in the galaxy doing his thing. And 1 second. So I got a Discord message. Yeah, he was out in the galaxy, fighting heretics, but he never got to Terra, and it affected him a lot. He wanted to be there. He wanted to defend the Emperor, but he just never got the chance. And the Horus Heresy happened, and he finally just says, "All right, I'm going back to Caliban. I'm going home. Shit went south. Shit's fucked up. I got to go back to Caliban." The Lion and his current dark angels that he has with him arrive at Caliban, and as soon as they enter low orbit, they are attacked from the surface of Caliban. Luther has gone traitor, and Luther, being the charismatic man that he was, that was truly his weapon. He wasn't a fighter, he wasn't a space marine. Charisma was his weapon. So he started planting the seeds, and he was like, I raised the Lion up from, saving him. He wouldn't be here without me. The spite sets in, the jealousy sets in. Pure ripe for the taking for the Chaos Gods to whisper in his ear. Um, and yeah, Luther goes traitor.
No, Luther, no.
And so do half the Dark Angels that are under
That.
Luther.
Okay. Ah,
And they
okay.
take the name the Fallen Angels.
That explains it. Okay.
So war breaks out on Caliban,
Oh, Lord. Okay.
and it is a huge mess. I'm talking countless deaths on Caliban. The Chaos Gods, not wanting to lose their new pawn Luther, kind of turn him into a mini Horus. They're like, damn it. They're like, damn, the Lion got here too soon before our plans could come to fruition. Like, all right, juice him up. And they juice up Lorgar to the point where he holds his own against the Lion. And he mortally wounds him. But not before the Lion gets a few licks in, and he falls to the ground, and the Chaos Gods realize that they can do no more except surround Caliban in a giant warp storm, essentially ripping it apart.
Oh.
At this time, the fallen angels are pulled into the warp along with the Lion. Luther is captured and put into the lowest cell in the Dark Angels kind of fortress monastery, which is known as the Rock. Just the Rock. And as these warp storms rip the planet apart, the Rock kind of floats off into space. There was some engines in the lower extremities of the fortress monastery, which allowed it to kind of leave the planet as it's being ripped apart. And yeah, and Caliban is lost. It is
Damn.
now an asteroid field.
Ah, rip
And
Caliban.
yeah, rip Caliban. But Luther is captured in secret. I also want to just, say something which I kind of glossed over. With the Knights of the Round Table, with the Lion being the Lion, um, with the Lion practically not talking to anyone, secrecy is their game. N-
Yeah.
Nobody knows what happened between Luther, the fallen angels, the Lion, and the Dark Angels. Even to this day, they keep that so hush hush that the other chapters aren't really aware of what happened. They just know Caliban died.
Damn.
They don't know that half the Dark Angels went traitor.
Okay, that was gonna be
That's
my
all
question.
a secret.
Okay.
And so Luther is kept captive for about 9,000 years in the rock. The lion finally, I forget where he was found, but he comes into real space, and he is then interned also in the deepest recesses of the rock, as he's in a kind of coma slash mortal wound state, and he needs to heal. With this, the dark angels then take on a very, very um scorched earth mentality. The
Hmm.
dark angels, they even get a hint that there is a group of fallen angels somewhere. They will send hundreds of space marines to kill a couple fallen members, not before they interrogate them wholeheartedly. Um, they have I forget his name. What is the Dark Angels interrogator chaplain? His name is. He's got a name. He's awesome. Can't believe I forget it. If someone in chat remembers,
Uh, the chaplains of the Dark Angels are pretty cool.
Asmodai. Yes, Asmodai.
Ah, okay.
Asmodai is awesome,
Okay.
and you find it fallen, you bring it to Asmodai because he'll
Ooh.
get he'll get answers out of him.
Okay.
He's an awesome character. And they are constantly looking for the fallen. Where are the fallen? We need to repent. We can't repent unless all the fallen are killed.
Okay. Uh,
And yes, question.
so this you mentioned Lionel Johnson, the lion. He woke up or like there's this whole thing. Like he was like gone for a while, right? And then he like wakes. Is that like where you're at right now in the story? Because I knew that he was like gone for a while and then like has come back? Question mark. So is that like
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Okay.
after the lion come, like, I don't know if he ends up on the rock or, so much lore, after 40 years, 35 years of lore, a lot of stuff has changed. But the lion's body is found and he is
Okay.
still alive. But he is kept secret in the rock for whatever, it's been 9,000 years since it happened. And
Hmm.
essentially, the only people that know that he was alive were the Watchers in the Dark. Those are those little kind of hooded figures you see on the lion's model. The
Yes,
little
I
the
love
little,
those little
the little guys,
guys.
they hold the
Yes.
scabbard, they're holding. These are unknown creatures native to Caliban.
Okay.
And
Okay.
one thing also, like, the lore for them is super weird. If they don't want to be seen, they're invisible. They don't have a presence in the warp, so like demons ignore them. Um, they don't talk. They just do things around the rock
Wow.
in secret. So only the Watchers knew where the lion was in the rock. And yeah, he just essentially, with the invention of the um, Rubicon, the Primaris Rubicon, that is what was able to bring the lion back to life. Same thing with Rabute Gilliman.
Okay.
Um, but I think Rabute woke up early. Then he spoke to Belisarius' call to start the Primaris Marine stuff. But I think the lion needed that in his current state. So that's why he just woke up very recently in the lore. Um,
Yeah.
and, you know, it was kept, and even in lore, we always kind of said, like, oh, like, the lion's dead, but not dead. Gilliman's dead, but not dead, So eventually, when he came back, um, you know, it was big. And at one point, this is before the lion wakes up. the rock is attacked and by demons essentially. And with that, Luther is freed. So Luther is now missing in action, but
Oh,
he is still alive and out there
damn.
somewhere in the galaxy or in the warp, wherever you are.
Him and his fallen
Um,
angels. Damn.
and his fallen angels. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and that's where kind of the meme is like, oh, Dark Angels. Oh, I didn't know you played, I didn't know you played Chaos. Like that whole thing. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because half of them turned and no one but the Dark Angels is aware of it.
Damn.
So
I
yeah,
didn't know that wasn't like a common knowledge thing. That
that the
it's
line was alive.
that he's alive, that there are fallen angels. People don't know about that.
No, you if it Dark Angels would kill a loyalist marine if they brought up the fallen angels. That's how like anal they are about keeping it hush hush.
Damn.
It
Okay.
is it's without a doubt their biggest dishonor,
Best kept secret.
and
Mm-hmm.
it is the biggest kept secret.
Okay.
Um, because they feel the need to repent.
Okay.
Um, and so, and there's other great Dark Angels. You have a character called Cypher, who is
Mm-hmm.
he's a fallen angel, but he might not be. He is just this Jason Bourne, James Bond, never gets caught. He is like the Dark Angel's biggest, like, red notice wanted poster is Cypher. And Cypher, he has the lion's sword on his back, but he never pulls it out of its sheath.
Oh.
But
Okay.
he holds Lionel Johnson's sword on his back, his original sword. There's theories that Cypher is trying to get to the Emperor to kill him, to bring him back. There's theories that someone mentioned it last week that Cypher is actually Alfarius or Omegon in
Oh.
disguise, doing stuff like that. Yeah. If word gets to the Dark Angels that Cypher was spotted, like it is everyone and their mother is leaving the rock to go
To
hunt
find
down
him.
Cypher.
Okay.
But every time he'll get captured on purpose, only to get put into a ship. That ship will explode. Where's Cypher's body? We don't know. Everything is so calculated and
Okay.
so secretive. He's just a very cool character to look into as Cypher. But getting back to the lion, um, you know, there's themes when you look at like um, the lion versus Luther. The
Okay.
lion, duty versus emotion. The lion, cold hard obedience to the
Mm-hmm.
emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Luther was loyal to Caliban. He never, again, he was never welcomed as a space marine. He was always
Mm-hmm.
looked down upon. The emperor did it for the lion because he was like, is that what you want? You want me to enhance your dog? All right, fine, I'll do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how he felt. He felt betrayed um
Hmm.
from the beginning, or not from the beginning, but from when he was kind of stepped over by the lion to take over the order. Um, you know, the lion was didn't explain anything. He said jump, you said how high.
Okay.
Luther, um, he preached redemption and what the meaning was, and um, the meaning of life, and he was wise. The lion cut himself off, even with his allies. He was an asshole. He was
Mm-hmm.
stern. He was quiet. He'd brood in the corner. Luther just wanted that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it was just
Yeah.
very, very hard experience. And and that's a lot of when we'll be talking about these Primarchs and you know, talking about their connections to humanity as a whole is a lot of them might look down on humanity. Some don't even know what humanity is. So when you have these either friends or father figures, a lot of them fall to chaos because they feel wronged. They
are
feel
treated.
hurt.
Yeah, they're treated not great.
Exactly.
Because these Primarchs are just, it's like, to me, it's like these Primarchs are just like these demigod guys. They show, like the lion, he just showed up on this planet, and, Luther finds him and takes him in, and it's just like, the lion will always be better than you. Like, will
Yep.
always be better than you. And you will probably get resentment from that, even though you put all this work in to bettering whatever. This guy will always be better than you. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And so,
that's rough.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's, you know, it's something to look about, to look at in, you know, who was right and who was wrong, essentially. Like Luther, the reason the Lion sent him back to Caliban is because um, the Dark Angels were losing a lot of members. They were, a lot were dying, and the recruitment numbers weren't up. So the Lion telling Luther to go back to Caliban, be like, oh, go handle recruitment on Caliban. It's fine.
Yeah,
Like I'll be
yeah,
okay. Like was he thrown away? Did he feel thrown away?
yeah, yeah,
All of that, again, chaos, pluck the strings. You're better than him. The people of Caliban love you, Luther. They don't love the Lion.
yeah.
And it got to his head.
So the Dark Angels as a chapter,
Hmm.
they I guess like what you were describing Caliban as a planet, I guess that explains some of the aesthetics of the Dark Angels, because they're very much like knights. They have that look. uh
Hmm.
I assume that's
The
because of their planet. Yeah.
exactly. So, each Primarch has their theme.
Yes.
Some more than others. You look at Magnus and the Thousand Sons, and it's all Egyptian themed. That's because Prospero was Egyptian, I guess Egyptian coded, if that's the word you want to use. They scarabs, kopeshes, pyramids, the big eye. And yeah, Caliban was based off of medieval Europe, in a way. So yeah, the Dark Angels have their hoods and their cloaks, secret order. Not so much Knights Templar, because that's more Black Templar.
Black Templars. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, very Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, that
Yeah.
type of stuff. Um, and they kill it. They look great.
Yeah, that's like, to me, that's what stood out to me the most with the Dark Angels. It's just really their aesthetic is very cool. They have a
Hmm.
very cool look. If you are into that, like, yeah, that medieval knight look, um, they have a certain style to it that I think is even honestly cooler than the Black Temple. I love the Black Templars as a chapter for different reasons. I think the Dark Angels are one of the best looking chapters.
They
So
get a lot of love, with
yeah.
the hexagrammaton. I believe it. Am I saying that right? Where is it again? Yeah, hexagrammaton. With the hexagrammaton, you have a tool for every job. Like you need heavy hitters, send in the Deathwing. You need fast flanking attacks, send in the Ravenwing. So the Lion forged the Dark Angels into a outstanding fighting force. Have Dark Angels love plasma. They put plasma on everything. The Deathwing are some of the best Terminators in the Imperium. Um, and Yeah, it just really goes to show when you have a very taciturn, stern leader, um, like the Lion, you can become one of the best fighting uh
Yeah.
forces in the Imperium. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's stories of you know uh the Lion. Who did the Lion knock out? I have to check. um I think, was it Lehman Russ? Yeah.
Oh.
So yes. I wanted to touch on that. So the Dark Angels have a bitter rivalry with the Space Wolves.
No
And
way. Okay.
yes, after a battle, um, Russ being his jovial kind of shit talker, kind of ass kicker type person, kind of joked to the Lion about like, "Oh, looks like you lost more men than we did," and the Lion just cold clocked him and knocked him out in one punch. And
Oh,
ever since then, the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels have hated each other to the point where they have fought one another because of
oh
that bitter rivalry.
my
And just
God.
like, yeah, you're gonna, talk shit, get hit. That's kind of the Lion's MO. Um, he's not a likable guy, but he's a hell of a fighter. You know,
Yeah.
that's just kind of how it was.
Interesting. Yeah. So he doesn't have any sort of charisma. His Charles Dance looking ass.
Yeah, yeah.
It's yeah. I wouldn't even say he's like what's his name from Game of. I always think when I look at his model, I think
Tywin
of
Lannister.
Tywin Lannister. But Tywin Lannister had some charisma. But
Absolutely,
uh,
yeah. I would equate him to kind of like hey, if we're thinking of like pop culture references, um he's a bit like, I don't know. My mind's going to King Arthur, but because that's what the Dark
because
Angels
it's
are, and that's kind of what it's based on.
right.
One thing I did also want to note was the um the lion is kind of like a mini me emperor. If one of the Primarchs, if you were to say like which Primarch was closest in demeanor wise to the emperor, the lion is a mini emperor. Whether he like because he was given command of the Dark Angels, which were the first.
Mm-hmm.
Whether again he was the first Primarch created because the Emperor was like, I'll need someone, and whether that was the Lion, that's that's kind of how you can see it as like the Lion, the Emperor, not great to his sons, not a great dad,
Mm.
very methodical, very this is what we're doing, and it's because I say so. Lion, very same way. Methodical, um, great military general, not a great strategist. If that's
Mm.
Gilliman's thing, is the strategist. It's the
That
politics
makes sense. Yeah.
of running the Imperium. The Lion would never want to do that.
So what's the emperor and the lion's relationship, or was their relationship?
The emp the lion was 100% yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Can I have another, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Lion was all for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Lion and the Emperor were very
They
close.
were tight.
Not so much. They were tight. The Lion wasn't given the title of like the Emperor's executioner. That went to Russ.
Yeah.
Um, but the Lion was his fighting force, him as himself. Um, he's up there with like the Emperor's favorite, I would say.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. I guess that makes sense because I do think about all of the loyalist Primarchs and like their relationships to the Emperor,
Hmm.
because they all seem to have very different relationships.
Yeah,
And I guess it makes sense if the lion is kind of just like not a big, he's just like a yes man. He just kind of does his shit
he's
and
just a yes. Yeah,
yep, he gets shit done.
he loved being in the Imperium.
Okay.
He outgrew Caliban in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
When the
Interesting.
Emperor came to Caliban and found him, he was like, "Awesome, next chapter, let's go. I'm down."
Mm,
Caliban, cool. Luther, you're in charge. Like
okay.
that kind of thing. Like, yeah, I'm ready to leave. Like, I'm over this planet, kind of stuff. And what
Okay.
the Emperor needed him to do, he excelled at, and he was good. He is
Okay.
good. I mean, he's still
He's
around, I
still
guess.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just interesting that the Dark Angels are, yes, they're not they're obviously they're more than meets the eye for a loyalist group. They're not like the blueberries, the Ultramarines.
Ultramarines.
They're not like the Ultramarines where like straightforward, like kind of chapter, and even like the Space Wolves, like it's just I really like that the Dark Angels have this like this side of them where they're not really like they're loyal, but it's like there's something going on there, and clearly there was a lot going on.
Yeah, they're in it for themselves, kind of at the moment. They always, the lion guy, they want nothing to do but hunt down the fallen and try to and torture people and interrogate people to where the fallen are. But the lion was a devoted follower of the emperor, and he instilled that in the Dark Angels, and that is why they um that is why they feel the need to repent so heavily to find the fallen angels, because you know they feel that unless they kill every single fallen angel, they are heretics in the eyes of the emperor.
So I had another question about the fallen angels. I actually don't know, do they have a different color scheme than like the regular dark, like your base color scheme for the Dark Angels, that like green? Do they have a different, because like if you were saying to make an army, like I want to make a Dark Angels army for my tabletop game, could you skin them to be like, I'm actually making, fallen angels, or like, for your own, like, whatever lore reasons, obviously. Yeah. Like I want to make fallen angel. I want to make a fallen angel specific army for my
Sure, a
table.
chaos undivided fallen angel army.
Yes. Is that, would you like paint them differently than like a regular
Honestly,
Dark Angels?
no, because the fallen angels, they think themselves, so the fallen angels see the Dark Angels as the heretics.
Damn.
Due to Luther's charisma and his needling in the heads of all the other Dark Angels that were on Caliban at the time, he turned so many of them to his side that they think they're the good guys, essentially. And so no, they might be a little dirtier. They might have a
Yeah.
skull or two more than your
Yeah.
Dark Angel. They might look a little more grungy, but no,
Yeah.
they're generally keeping the same color scheme.
I guess that makes sense because of the whole secrecy thing that's big with the Dark Angels. You don't want people to know that you are like the fallen angels. So you would probably keep that same color scheme. So yeah, that's very interesting. Oh my gosh, it's like, and then nobody knows. So like, if you're fighting,
Nobody knows.
So what? If I'm like thinking about this, if a fallen angels army, they would not be attacking like a death guard, because they're also chaos, I guess.
Yeah, but
But
yes and
chaos
no.
fights chaos, I guess. It's fucking
Exactly. Yeah, the
it's
chaos gods
all
hate each
fucking all
other
over the
too.
place.
So
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
they're gonna be they're gonna have infighting and stuff like that.
That yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like the fallen angels, they're kind of in like a little bit of in a limbo, because it's hard to call them like chaos undivided, because um they've never gotten like super lore with like, they've never gotten their own book. They don't have any, like when you buy the Chaos Space Marines Codex, they have all the other like um actual chaos chapters in there. So like, Iron Warriors. Like there's Iron Warriors rules, even though, Perturabo has never gotten his own book.
Right.
You can still play as an
Play
Iron Warriors army and use those rules. There isn't a Fallen Angels rule set
rule.
as far as I know.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you could
It's a,
really
it, It's a bit
Yeah.
of a Spider-Man meme with like the fallen, like where they're all pointing at each other. That's kind
Yeah.
of what it's like. It's like loyalist, loyalist, loyalist. As they're all pointing at each other, like, but what kind of loyalist? Like it's all and none of them are gonna like they're oh I'm a loyalist. Oh, I'm a loyalist. Because the whole secrecy is their whole game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they do, that's why when they get a shred of information about a fallen angel, full speed ahead. Where are they? Are
Take
they
him
still
out.
alive?
Yeah.
Take them out, question them, whatever you need. Um, and yeah, it's a very cool concept to think about.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
going back to the Emperor,
Yeah.
real quick. The if you could split it up, because I was thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
The lion was the emperor's like sword, whereas Horus was the emperor's heir, and Gilliman was the emperor's like politician.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to like split it up into like kind of like a triarch type thing.
Okay.
But the emperor going, when you say like, was the emperor and the lion close? No, the lion, the lion didn't change around the emperor, but also the emperor kind of liked it that way,
Yeah.
and the lion kind of liked it that way. Like it was like like when you like when like you have a maybe you have a certain father in your life, and it's just like, hey dad, hey, what's going on?
Hey,
Like
son.
that's the conversation you have,
Yeah.
like you and your mom hugging and kissing, chatting. Your dad's just on like the lazy boy, like, how's it going? Good, how are you? Great. Like that's all the words you guys will say in hours. And that's kind of the relationship that the lion and the emperor had. He would kind of say, hey, I need you to do this. All right, I'm on my way. That's it. And the
Yeah.
lion and the emperor liked it that way.
Oh man. I assumed the lion didn't have many friends and like
No.
based on his demeanor. Man, now I really want to read that book that has Gilliman, Sanguinius, and the lion, and just see those interactions because uh, did any like I guess yeah. So they had to work together. And he punched freaking Lehman Russ.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess he didn't really have a lot of like friends. Primarch,
No.
but
Abs
none of
abs
his bros were his
the
friends.
the closest friend he had was Luther.
Was Luther who
And
betrayed him.
and and yeah,
Damn.
he is not a friendly person.
Okay.
Um
Ooh.
and he liked it that way. He
Yeah.
wanted it that way.
Yeah.
He, whether it was from the day he landed on Caliban, or if it was his X amount of years in the wilds, maybe that's how the emperor created him. He said, "This will be my sword."
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
the gene splicing that him and Erda did. Um, because
Because
obviously
is some
every Primarch has
aspect.
their specialty
Yeah.
and an aspect of the Emperor.
Yes.
And so maybe when he was like, for my first one, yeah, I'll need my general. I'll need my my hammer when everything starts looking like a nail.
Yes. I wrote some of the different aspects down when I was reading The First Heretic because it's
Mm-hmm.
brought up. Somebody actually in I think this is Corferon who was saying this. He's like talking to Lorgar, and he's like, there are all these different aspects of the Emperor. Like Lehman Russ is the ferocity, untempered by reason. Magnus is the psychic potential. Horus is the ambition, unshaped by humanity. Gilliman, echo, heart and soul of the Emperor. The lion, rationality and analytics, is what he
Mm-hmm.
said. So
Yep.
that makes sense now. That's very interesting. He's just like straightforward, rationale, get it done.
Yep. Him and Lehman, not friends.
Yeah,
Hated Kurz. Hated him.
yeah. Oh,
Cause they're the opposite. If
y-
if if the lion was, I guess if you want to say honor, You
Mm-hmm.
know, if the lion was honor, Kurz is tyranny and terrorism.
Yeah.
Zero honor with Conrad.
Yeah.
They never saw eye to eye. Even so much as when um Gilliman, Sanguinius, and the lion capture Conrad Kurz, the lion just wants to behead him right there and then. Like, no, like, oh, you caught him? Cool. Why is he still breathing?
Yeah.
You
Damn.
know, and just wanted to kill him. Um, you know, him and Gilliman had a little bit of they were both great generals.
Mm-hmm.
But the lion had zero in diplomacy.
Mm. Yeah.
He was not the politician.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you said that Luthor is still alive.
He is, yes. So he was captured as Caliban was being destroyed by loyalist Dark Angels. He was imprisoned in the rock, and the only person that knows of that is the current chapter master of the Dark Angels. Is the only person that knows that Luther's there. And
Okay.
Luther, being in a cell for 9,000 years, has gone insane. And he rambles and he babbles about,
Mm-hmm.
chaos this, chaos that. Um, and it is said that when when Luther and the lion fought on Caliban, when Luther was being juiced up by the chaos gods, very similar to when Horus fights the Emperor. And when Luther landed the mortal blow to the lion, as soon as it landed in true chaos fashion, they took all the power from him in that moment. So as the blade was falling, he came to his senses. And like some of the lore is like that's why like the lion survived because he like stayed his blow at the last second, but
Yeah.
still like grievously wounded him. Um, and so there was a little repentance from
From
Luther
Luther. Okay.
right before Caliban started getting ripped apart.
Damn.
Um, but yeah, Luther is still out there. Um, you know, 10,000 years old.
And,
You know,
but
with whether he's with the fallen angels or he's just doing something. Yeah, he's not confirmed dead.
okay, interesting. And then Caliban, the planet is
Dust,
fallen, is taken to warp
dust. Yep,
and
it's an
zoop.
asteroid field.
Okay. Damn. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Cool planet. Very, very cool. You know,
yeah.
medieval themed castles, dark, like almost like, the Black Forest in Germany, big trees, very dense, monsters
Yeah.
around every corner. Almost like a medieval kind of like Van Helsing, if you will.
Yeah.
With like monster hunters and or like, Monster Hunter the game where everyone's out fighting gigantic monsters to save what humanity is left on Caliban.
Yeah, that I would love some like I have to look some visuals of the planet because I just feel like it's probably a very cool yeah,
Very lush, very green, a
yeah.
thick fog at all hours of the day,
Yeah.
very eerie.
Yeah, I dig that. Which makes sense because yeah, the Dark Angels just have such a cool vibe. So,
Hmm.
I for everybody in chat, I really wanted a Primarch mini, and the one that I ended up choosing was Lionel Johnson, and I'm glad I did because I think he's really cool. Like I don't know. I didn't know a lot about him as a Primarch till now, and I can't say like he's like in my favorites. I think he is in my favorites just because I put him as my favorites more because I just liked the vibes. It wasn't like that I like him as a character, but I do think he's pretty cool. I don't know where he ranks on like my list, but do
It's
you?
it's also kind of hard because you only have Gilliman or the Lion now to
That's
choose from.
true. There's not a lot
Yeah,
of Primarch
and yeah,
models.
Gilliman's cool, but he's He's a
He's
politician. He's a little boring.
he's pretty basic. Yeah. So and the lion is like way cooler and edgier and all this stuff. So, like for you, Chris, do you have a ranking? Obviously, I don't like. What's your 20 Primarch ranking? Like, do you have like? Is he like up there for the Lionel Johnson, or is he like kind of middle, or is that like the bottom for you?
For loyalist, or are we doing all Primarchs?
Let's stick to loyalist because there's
For
a lot of
loyalist.
Primarchs.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that the lion is definitely up there for loyalist Primarchs. He's probably top 3 of the 9. Some of the loyalist Primarchs, uh, you know, were didn't really get enough justice, I feel.
Mm,
But the lion is definitely very cool from just all around aesthetic style.
yeah, yeah. I would agree. He's up there. And yeah, there because there's a lot of cool Primarchs. But I think he definitely he I like him a lot. So yeah.
Since he's such a new model, I
Yeah.
know, and again, there are so many Black Library books. I could be totally mistaken, but I hope, Gilliman was given like a whole, like all of, because I think we're currently in 10th edition for the tabletop. Pretty much all of 9th edition was just Gilliman doing cool shit. I hope they give the lion like his time in the spotlight, where like
Yeah.
he messes some stuff up, or maybe the lion finally, maybe Cypher goes to the lion and like gives him his sword back. Because
Mm.
he's not using his sword. Like on his model, he has a shield and
Yeah, you're right.
just like a long sword. It's probably named because Primarchs name their weapons. But yeah, he's not using like his two-handed, like almost like Ned Stark level size of
Mm-hmm.
great sword.
Yeah.
Are you looking at Cypher?
I'm looking at the lion model.
Ah,
But you know, I I made this joke the other day of I forget. I'm like I find it very weird. This is like a slight tangent that there are just some armies that you can build in 40K where you can have a Primarch be in your army. And the Dark Angels would be one of them because not every Primarch can be represented at the table. A lot of them are dead or I don't fucking know. And like it's just wild to me that like Lionel Johnson has stats and like he could be played at a table and he has a
he can
point
be
value.
killed on the tabletop.
Yeah, like what the fuck? Like that's wild to
It
me.
it is a little silly goofy. It is a little silly goofy that he has, like, and it was, especially because like Magnus was the first Primarch released like on the
Uh-huh.
tabletop. I remember when Magnus came out, and it was pretty it was pretty splitting for the community. Like, oh, like Psyker Primarchs on the table? Like, how does that make sense? Like, why would 50 Space Marines like deal with a Primarch? Because when you're running a 2,000 point game, which is the standard on the tabletop, it's like Magnus could snap his fingers and just erase this board. So you got to take a little, like, with the tabletop and the lore, you gotta separate them a little bit.
Yes, you're right. It is. I do have to separate it because I play tabletop role playing games. So when I think of a tabletop setting, I'm thinking like I'm in it. I am immersed in it. That's me playing 40K.
These are demigods,
Yeah, and
it'd be
they're
you know
yeah.
it'd be the equivalent of, like, I don't know, like the party being led by
Yeah, like the
uh
Frost
like
Maiden,
Zybilna
or
or something, or the
yeah,
frost, yeah,
because
like
yeah, or
one of
like
those demigod
Zariel
people.
or something.
Or
Like
Zariel, yeah, like, hey Zariel, you want to go help us? Yeah, cool, I'll help you fight this fight.
yeah, that's wild to me. But I Darkwing. That's funny. That's a funny comment. Um, Okay, I just looked up Cypher, and yo, this guy is fucking badass. What?
He's so
He
badass.
is so cool. Look at this guy. Okay, I need to read his book.
Yeah, and so he has a very old plasma pistol, and then he has a very ornate bolt pistol, and he like dual wields, and he
The way
like
he has this pose with the two pistols, like, and
across his chest like some James Bond, Jason Bourne like guy. Yeah, and
he is
that's
Jason
his.
Bourne. Oh my god.
Yes, yes, and he sometimes he gets caught on purpose, then he disappears, then he's found, and then I have a message for Rabute Gilliman, and then then they'll like, well, maybe it is something for Rabute, and then like I believe in one part of the recent lore, Gilliman actually talked with him. I think if I heard correctly, and then he like Gilliman was like, take him away, and then he escaped. He escaped TERRA. He got away for somehow. Like
Wow.
whether he's jumping through warp portals or he's being helped or maybe he's just that good. Yeah, Cypher is a very cool character and
Okay.
model.
I dig it. Dig this named character. I'm adding him to the list of cool named characters. Next to Inquisitor Greyfax and Saint Celestine and Dante and all the others.
Maybe they can have a little a little triplet and Cypher, Celestine, and Greyfax can go out and do
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Oh man, my dream. Okay, very cool. This is cool. I like. I I am so glad. I feel like I know the Dark Angels now. As just again, like I've said this, I already said this, but like for so long, I'm like, oh, they're so cool, and I just didn't really know that much about them, and their planet and their history and the lion's origin of just being this feral man on a planet that was found by this guy who betrays him. What the heck? This is
Maybe he should have been a better friend. Maybe the lion should have been a better friend.
This is the lesson, guys, from this. Be a better dad, be a better friend. Then maybe the people in your life won't betray you.
And turn to chaos.
And turn to chaos. Don't let the chaos gods whisper in your ears. Okay?
Or do and have some fun,
There's two sides of this coin, and I stand firmly on one side, and Chris stands firmly on the other. Yes, your chaos, death guard nonsense.
All shall rot. All right. Just remember that.
Okay, so any last thoughts or things to share about the Dark Angels, Lionel Johnson? Any other cool tidbits that we have forgotten before we
talked
hit the
about the
end?
Watcher. The Watchers are cool, just mysterious little guys who live on the
Yeah,
rock.
I want to
Not
know.
really sure what they are.
I am like totally. I'm enthralled by them now too. I'm like I want to know what these little guys are. Do any of the other? I wonder if the other Dark Angels models have those little guys. Because I know they're.
I believe like, just like how the Sisters of Battle, your heavy weapon squads. I forget what they're called, but just how they have the cherubs floating. I believe a couple of the models have a Watcher in the Dark or two, like little model.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very interested in them as an army as a whole. Hey, Panic Switch, Tveen, you have a Dark Angels fully painted army now. So you can tell us more about your Dark Angels armies if they have little guys on them. I just love those little guys. Yeah, and you're right. They do have a lot of like plasma weapons.
They love plasma.
Yeah, that seems to be a lot. Yeah, I wonder how they play like on the table, like what their vibes are like.
Dark Angels, because they have Deathwing, Ravenwing, the other wings, like you can play them really however you want. They have answers for everything.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I'll have to check out more of their models and stuff too, because I think they're pretty cool. Cool. This has been very enlightening.
Do you have any more questions? Does chat have any questions before we
Yeah.
wrap up?
Chat, any questions pertaining to Lionel Johnson, Dark Angels, Loyalist, Space Marines, Loyalist chapters? I'm trying to think if I have any other questions. Okay. So I actually, now that you've explained a bit of how the Primarchs started, I did not know that. So what? He was the first found, and that's why he's number one. But was he also the first made?
He was not the first found. Horus was the first found.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the
Yes,
order of Primarchs is by how they were made. So Lion was
correct.
the first made. Okay.
Yes, but maybe it's never confirmed.
Okay.
But whether the Dark Angels were given the numerical value of the first, whether that's because um, the Space Marines and the Lion were first, like, ideaed first, or whether it's just happenstance, not really sure. But yeah, but the Lion wasn't found. I think he's about middle of the pack. But
Okay.
Horus was the first Primarch found.
Okay. Interesting. I see. If you could choose, DM Polar, if you could choose one specialty of the Dark Angels army, which ones would you guys choose? Like a specialty.
Maybe of the hexagrammaton.
Ooh.
I like Deathwing. Deathwing Terminators are awesome. A buddy of mine used to play Dark Angels, and he would run so many Ravenwing bikers, and I always hated them because they were super powerful, and Ravenwing on Raven like Ravenwing Captain on bike has like a 6-up save, 4-up feel no pain. Like, this was back in the day, and they were just very, and if you were on a bike, you got like extra wounds and an extra toughness because like the bike could take a hit or stuff like that. Um, so Ravenwing bikes were the bane of my existence for quite some time. But no, I like Deathwing Terminators. They're pretty awesome.
I like this idea of making an army being these fallen angels now. I think that's a pretty cool like idea, and you're not actually a loyalist army.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. I dig that a lot.
just playing Dark Angels, but you never say for the Emperor. You're not really sure what way you lean. I think that's also what makes Dark Angels so cool, is because like there is um there is a little give and take. Are you loyalist? Are you heretic? What do you believe in? Are you just here for the cool aesthetic of the Dark Angels?
Yeah, yeah. I like thinking about those things as you're making your army or as you're building your army. That's what I think about. Jarek, how do these chapters relate to Psyker? Or how do they relate to Psychers? Do they relate? Psychers are a whole other story.
How do the chapters relate to psychers? So each chapter had some psychers. Most of them had psychers. But after, this is getting a little deeper. Obviously, Magnus met, like someone mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Magnus spoke to the Emperor in his gestation pod, like telepathically. Um, and Magnus, obviously the most powerful psyker of the Primarchs, arguably one of the most powerful psykers in the galaxy. But some had more, some had less, some had absolutely none. For example, like the World Eaters, um, Angron, no psychers. Um, whether that's from the butcher's nails, the tendril technological dreadlocks that they wear. Um, yeah, like Virtual Viking said, because there was after psychers started getting more and more powerful or popular,
Ooh.
populous in the galaxy, the Emperor had to have a meeting. It's called the Council of Nicaea or Nicaea, however you want to say it. And he essentially said, "Yep, no more psychers. Psychers are banned. Magnus, go home." And the Space Wolves says, "We don't have psychers. We have rune priests." It's like
Ah.
those are psychers. No, no, they get their power from Fenris. No, they don't. They're pulling it from the
Yeah.
warp. Nope. Rune priests get their power from Fenris, and like no one had the gall to like argue with them.
Yeah.
Um, but
I like
but yeah,
that.
different chapters had different psychers, different strengths.
Mm.
Um, some really powerful ones, some not so powerful ones. But yes, librarians are Space Marine psychers.
I have to I will have to look up some of the other like leader characters that the Dark Angels have because I'm curious like what their other like champion characters are because I'm interested.
Yeah, and just like how, just how like the Blood Angels have very like I don't know if it's Roman or Greek, like Sanguinius and
Mhm.
Dante and Lamartez.
Mhm.
Dark Angels go the same way, very biblical. Asmodai, Elijah.
Mm.
I'm trying to think of some other ones. Azrael. Azrael is
Mhm.
the Grand Master. He's the um I believe that is what they call so like each chapter also has different names for their chapter master.
Mhm.
And so Azrael, a lot of biblical
Which
um,
I also
you know,
love. I love
Roman
those.
Catholic names.
I
Yeah.
love those types of names too. They're so cool. Um, yeah, they got a cool vibe. I dig it. To any of you Dark Angels fans in chat, I I I see why they are. Like I just dig their vibe a lot. So yeah.
And you have to also remember that no one knows like Azrael being the chapter master of the Dark Angels, he's the only person that knows that Luther's alive and that he's broken out. Like Dark
Yeah.
Angels deal with a lot of secrets that they themselves have to carry. No
Yeah.
one knows the fallen angels exist, but the Dark Angels do. Azrael is the only person that knows that Luther's alive and now he's free. And they'll never reveal that secret. It's all
Yeah.
about carrying the weight of the secret with you with the Dark Angels as well.
Yeah. Did they do anything? Hey, thanks for the raid. Welcome in everybody.
Hey, thanks
Thank
so much.
you. Do they do anything to keep themselves more covert? Because they don't seem like a covert ops kind of chapter, but they're all about secrets. Like, I don't know if there's anything in their lore that keeps them more secretive.
Not so the way they keep secrets is to like
Just
I mentioned like
kill.
that scorched earth
Yeah.
policy.
Take out
No one can
anything.
tell a secret if everyone's dead.
Okay.
And like you said, paranoia. Yeah. Secrets, paranoia. Oh, someone whispered fallen in this building, level the building. It might have not even been fallen angel, but someone said fallen in the same sentence as angel to kill everyone inside. Can't
Uh,
have any leaks if no one's alive.
So like even like Rabute Gilliman doesn't know about this. Like no one knows about
No one knows.
like
I mean,
Luthor.
I don't want to say no one knows because the lore is vast and there might be a couple side stories where the word has gotten out. But it's not public knowledge.
Okay. So yeah, Does Trazen know? Does Trazen have something of the Dark Angels in his collection? That's the.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. He might have a Deathwing Terminator in his collection somewhere.
That's the big question.
That's going to be a bit now for this. We have to, like, at the end, we have to show what relic Trazen has of the chapter.
Yes, absolutely. That is the end segment of this. We look up his Trazen's collection. That's great. Dark Angels aren't covert op, but they jealously guard their secrets. Okay, so it's not like they're like infiltrating secret guy. They're not like super sneaky. They're just like aggressive about their secrets. Yeah. There were a couple of other books that I was looking at, potentially reading, related to the Dark Angels, and I will pull them up. Descent of Angels, which I think is like number 6 in like the Horus Heresy books, and then Fallen Angels, which now, when I first read the title, I was like, okay. I don't know. I actually don't know fully what those 2 books are about, but they are on like you should read these for Dark Angels. So, yeah. And then, of course, there's like the newer book for Lionel Johnson that is more recent. That's about him specifically. There's a couple of, like, the Dark Angels omnibus book that you were talking about. So there seems to be, quite a few things you can read about them and learn more about them. But I'm very interested in these Lionel Johnson specific ones of his interactions with some of the other Primarchs, because I think that will be very entertaining to read. Yeah.
I have heard, again, I haven't read it, so I'm not exactly sure. But the Lion Primarch book seems to be an interesting read, because it reads like Imperial propaganda.
Oh, okay. We love a little Imperial propaganda book.
It's very written in like, oh, the Dark Angels are so great. Look at all they can do. They're so flawless. This, that, and the other.
Interesting. Okay.
Look at all the cool weapons and technology they have to smite their fallen angels.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Okay. All right. I feel I have learned a lot about the first Primarch and the first chapter, the Dark Angels. I am excited for the next one, because that'll be our 3rd Primarch, because obviously...
We're not doing a second?
I mean, unless you know something that the rest of us don't know.
I don't.
About...
I know nothing. What are you talking about?
About a second Primarch. Strap yourselves in, tee-hee, because I'm sure we'll want to be strapped in for...
Yeah. For number 3?
For number 3, for Fulgrim.
Get the strapped in.
I know, truly. Fulgrim's another one where I know some things about him, but I really don't know his whole thing. And obviously we make all these jokes about Fulgrim, and I see all the jokes, but I am very curious to learn more about Fulgrim and who he really is.
Fulgrim's gonna be a juicy one.
Yeah.
There's a lot more entertainment, I guess you could say, with Fulgrim.
Sure, it'll be spicy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking, and his kind of second in command guys are also kind of interesting. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. That is pretty much it, gang. We're about at like almost the 2-hour mark for this chat. Any last things or last thoughts?
Or if you want to see us, like, we planned on doing the Primarchs first, but if people are like, I want to know everything about this X topic, maybe we'll touch on that before we make our way down the list.
Yeah, we could always take like a sidetrack. There may be at some point is something where I'm like, I need to know about this now. We need to talk about it, so that we may stray a bit from the going through all 18 of the Primarchs. Vulcan is quite down the line, I believe, when I was looking at the list. So all you Vulcan fans, unfortunately, are gonna have to wait a while.
I think he's like 17 or something.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I know he was quite down the line. Yeah. So, all right, everybody.
Correction, he is 18.
He's 18.
He's 18.
So he's like second to last, because like, isn't the 19th the other scrubbed one, or is it? No.
No, 11 is scrubbed.
11 is scrubbed.
It's Vulcan, Corax, and then Alfarius, Omegon. Which there's also, again, don't have to go deep into it. There's also some lore/theories that Alfarius was actually the first one found and Omegon was the last because they're twins. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes, I did know that they were twins.
Yeah, so like the Emperor found Alfarius and was like, keep doing what you're doing in the shadows. I'll find your brother last.
Yeah.
So like Alfarius was around the entire time the Horus Heresy, or like not the Horus Heresy, but the Great Crusade was happening. But in the records it says that he found them last. But
okay.
Some people say that Alfarius was first because, again, Alfarius Alpha first, Omegon last. There's kind of a bit of a tricksy thing going on there.
Yeah,
But
I see
with
that.
Alfarius and Omegon, everything is tricksy.
I've another one that I am looking forward to. One that I don't know a lot about, but I'm like, they seem very interesting. Alfarius and Omegon. So yes. Okay, gang. I think that is where we're gonna leave it off for now. So as far as next episode, we will probably, like, I think next Wednesday I'm gonna do another office hours. So maybe the 16th I'll talk with Chris and see if we're available, and we can touch on Fulgrim and keep going. But for now, if you all want to continue discussions or like share any other requests, I realize I didn't do the poll in Twitch chat, so I'm gonna do it on Discord. If you want to keep the discussion going, join us, discord.gg/MagiRPG. We talk a lot about Warhammer there. We talk about all of our other shows that we have going on at MagiRPG and just any other random topics and things that we want to talk about. So join us there to talk more. Check out MagiRPG. We do tabletop role-playing games. We currently are playing a Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory series, which maybe some of you may have come from, being that, you know, we do Warhammer content on the channel, and so we now are going to be talking about Warhammer on the channel. So yeah, we will be back next Friday. So I'll be back next Wednesday. Ignite Recall's off next week. We'll be back. I'll be back on Wednesday for some office hours, and then we'll be back on Friday the 11th for 40K Wrath and Glory. Our last episode before we take a bit of a break, like a season break. So hope to see you all there. Chris, thank you again for instilling your knowledge.
Happy to be here. Happy to, Tracy sent me a meme yesterday about it's like me after 800 hours of lore is said to my friends, and it's like a psyker smiting a human with like the beam coming out of their forehead.
That's me. That's Chris.
I love providing the vast lore that I've learned over the last 25 years, 20 years, not 25. Geez, I just almost aged myself a little bit. Over the last 20 years of being in the Warhammer community, follower, player of Warhammer. And I know as well as anyone, it's not the easiest thing to kind of jump into. So I'm happy to help, happy to talk, and I hope the information about the lion was helpful. And if you become a Dark Angels player from this, hit me up.
Yeah.
Let's play a game.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. And we will see you in the next one.
All right, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
The Emperor protects.